Hi, I'm Verena Gayatri Primus. In this video, I just want to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about who I am and why I do what I do and why I teach the course I do. And yeah, just that you meet me and that you know who is guiding you on this journey. My given name is Verena. My spiritual name that I was given also more than 25 years ago in my yoga teacher training is Gayatri. And both names I've been using. Of course, I'm born in Austria, so people in Austria tend to call me Verena, but I've lived more than 10 years in California, and most people, students and friends included, knew me as Gayatri. And Gayatri is a beautiful name that really describes what I'm doing, and I was given this so long ago, and it's so fitting. Because Gayatri in the yogic tradition is the energy that brings righteousness and light back into the world. And I thought it's so fitting. And Gayatri is also connected to Saraswati in the Hindu tradition, or to Kuan Yin in the Chinese tradition, Buddhist tradition, and they are goddesses of wisdom, they're goddesses of art, they're goddesses of knowledge and imparting compassion and knowledge on the world. And really, this is my mission. This is who I've grown into. I'm doing this. I'm walking a spiritual path since it's actually started when I was 15 years old, exactly on the 21st of February 1992. That was the day I really woke up. The time before, I lived a life, I grew up in Vienna, it was beautiful. I didn't grow up very healthy, just to start off. I didn't grow up at all in an Ayurvedic or yogic family. Quite the opposite, I grew up with meat. My family was drinking alcohol. My father was smoking. I grew up with lots of sweets. I have a box of ruined teeth, from my childhood. I didn't grow up healthy at all, but I grew up with a consciousness of God. I grew up in a Catholic church and school, and my mother was very religious, and my father and my mother both loved music and the arts. And when I was 15, it would take too long to tell you all of this, but I had I would say, an awakening experience. And from this moment on, I knew there was something bigger. I knew there was something or someone that heard my deepest wishes, that knew me inside out, and everything I wish for can come true. I called it first the more of life, and I personally, growing up in the Christian tradition, I call it God. And from that time on, from the 21st of February 2092, I started to journal. I started to write. That became my first spiritual practice since I was very young. And I grew up as a professional classical dancer, so also dance, I think, was my form of yoga way before I got into yoga. And I still must say, classical dance is the peak, of mental and physical control, but it lacked the spiritual component to it. So when I found the yoga really healed me. I found yoga not also through dance. I first came to yoga and meditation when I lived in New York City. I was 18 years old. I was taking voice classes besides my dance classes, and two of my voice teachers told me, Verena, you can't breathe, So as a ballet dancer, I was always used to pull in my stomach, hold myself tight. So already my voice teacher in Vienna, she sent me to kind of a body relaxation technique. And my voice teacher in New York, who's actually the voice teacher of Michael Bolton, he said, you need to start meditating. So my first meditation was Taoist meditation. And this really opened a whole new level I found out what Kundalini is, what energy is, directing it in my body. And with this, I also got in touch with someone who looked into my eyes and said, you have to learn Reiki. And this was really the beginning of my spiritual practice. I learned this wonderful healing technique that really transformed my life. And since I was 18 years old, I've been treating people, including my father. And this is a very touching story. I don't have time to tell you, but he heard me, he saw me, and he survived a very difficult heart operation, and he thanked me for it afterwards. Thanking me that I visited him, but scolding me that I turned on the light and talked to him so loud. At that time, he was in a hospital in Vienna, and I was working in Paris. So, yes, my world turned around. Long story short, my life shifted from my biggest passion, which was dancing. It was my passion since I was 4 years old, shifted more and more to healing. And also in Paris, I got introduced to yoga, and yoga started to heal me from the quite strong training, also with its ticks of classical Russian ballet. I started to heal my body, I started to heal the connection to myself. And again, scrolling forward in London, then when I lived in London as a dancer and performer, I got to yoga again. There I got even deeper, and I had the desire to go and do a yoga teacher training course. And there, finally, everything came together. My conversations I had at that point for almost 8 years with God became true, and I realized, oh my God, there's a whole science behind what I've been feeling, what I've been learning from life. And yoga really healed me from a lifelong addiction, I think, from sugar and caffeine. I grew up as a ballet dancer, eating sweets and living on caffeine. And yoga, really in this 1 month, it completely cured and healed me, I would say. There I got introduced, to vegetarian diet, to Ayurveda, and really from that time on, so I was 23, 24 at the time, I practiced yoga every day, and everything came together. It became the physical practice for me, it became a lifestyle for me, it became the nutrition for me, it became a spiritual practice for me, chanting to God. And there also my life took a big turn. I moved from London to California. I got married. I lived the Californian yogic life. I did a training in massage, in cranial sacral therapy, in trigger point therapy, and finally I arrived at Ayurveda. I studied physiology and anatomy, and then I decided, well, I'm quite smart. Why don't I knew medicine wasn't for me, but I thought maybe Chinese medicine or chiropractic or osteopathic medicine. But then I met Ayurveda in my first advanced teacher training course, and I thought, that's it. That one form of medicine is just everything I've been practicing and everything I've been looking for. And without even having read one single book on Ayurveda, I decided to go to the California College of Ayurveda and become a clinical Ayurvedic specialist. It fitted so well with my already yoga teacher practice and my healing practice, and everything came together. Again, fasting forward, I put everything together. I got an opportunity to teach Ayurveda and yoga, create an Ayurveda yoga department in a medical center. And it was a great proposition, but I said no. Before I make that commitment, I want to go to the land where Ayurveda and yoga is coming from. And I booked my first big trip to India. It was 6 months. I decided I go all in. And I went to strong in southern intensive, way up in the Himalayas. I went to Rishikesh to visit the ashram of Shivananda. I booked, I think, 4 or 5 weeks with an Ayurvedic doctor in Vrindavan just to study with him. And my journey went on from there for another 3 weeks. A lot of adventures, a lot of heartbreak as well, a lot of spiritual experiences. When I came back, I was quite changed. I think that was the turning point where yoga and Ayurveda was a lifestyle, was a way of teaching and working, and my spiritual guest became very serious. I was just wanting to meditate and practice yoga. Yes, cutting a long story short, I did move to London. I did almost take over my old yoga studio, creating Ayurveda and yoga there. wanting to create a dream of with my partner at that time to take over that school, and then all fell apart. It all fell apart. And at that time, I went to California to the ashram, and I took a Vedanta retreat, which is one form of yoga. And I was there, and I thought, no, I want to go all in. I'm in this yoga journey for sure, seriously. And if you believe it or not, I was at that point where I wanted to renounce the worldly life. I gave away my high heels, my mini skirts, my makeup. I was ready, and I did move into the ashram, taking on the role of managing the Hatha Yoga program, of being in charge of the Ayurvedic department there, but mainly to really go all in my spiritual practices, learning puja, doing all day long, actually from 4:30 till 10 o'clock at night, nothing else but sadhana. And I think it was 8 months that it was the first time that I left. And going to a Whole Foods store was a big accomplishment at that time. I felt quite removed from the world. And then again, a series of things happened, and I decided to leave the ashram, and I decided to follow a living guru. Some of you might know her. Her name is Amma. I really experienced a great shift with her, and I decided, no, I want to follow a living guru. And I went once again all in. I left everything. I went to India to travel with her, to go be at her ashram, do more Ayurvedic cleanses for myself. And to be honest with you, it was a hard time. It was hard to go so deep into the spiritual practice and still have my feet on the ground. But I managed somehow. And there were really the next years I spent between California and India. Just working in California, giving Ayurvedic consultations to private clients, and then having enough money to go back to India and be with Amma and the spiritual practice there. And I was really quite desperate. I was desperate at that point. I wanted to know the truth. I wanted to meet God. I had nothing else in my mind. There was no relationship, no worldly goal that I wanted. I wanted to go all in. And yes, well, through a series of quite tragic occurrences, a friend of mine also died in this process, but it brought me to the doorsteps of my Zen master. And luckily, she freed me. She freed me from the journey. She freed me from the quest. Took a long time, but she cracked her, she calls it my coconut head. She made me see. And about this, I can't talk, because when I got back, I had to decide what to do with my life. Before the last 10 years, all there was spiritual practice. So now what to do now? And there really the journey shifted. I arrived back into the world. I still loved yoga. I still loved dance. So one of the first things I did was I created a yoga dance movie, musical with different artists and yoga teachers. I put it all together. I was the director, the producer, the main role. I was dancing on point shoes. I was dancing modern dance. I told my whole story, from the Viennese ballerina to the sexy model in London, to the California yogi, to the sannyasin at the ashram and in India, and how everything got resolved. And here I'm back in the world. And in this year, I met my now husband. And after a year, actually, just before I went the second time to my Zen master, he asked me to marry him. And right after this India trip, just a couple months later, just when I opened my private Ayurveda and yoga studio in Vienna, just the same day of the opening, I found out I was pregnant. And a lot of astrologers have told me it will be very hard to have children, to have a partnership, to have a family. But there it was, just like that. And I found myself as mother. And yes, I applied everything I've learned on my journey of Ayurveda, yoga, and healing to every part of my motherhood. Even looking back in the preconception time, because just before I conceived, I was in India. I took all the Ayurvedic herbs. I did all the spiritual practices. I did everything actually to prepare myself for pregnancy. That's what I'm teaching now, mothers who like to have me as a support for preconception time and conception, because this is a very important time in Ayurveda. I did it all and I became pregnant. And yes, I was overjoyed, but it was also a difficult time for me. My mother just died 2 months before the birth of my son. And I was in Vienna, just been there a year, completely new, coming from California and India. And I just had to orientate myself. I often felt lost. I often felt alone. And the one thing that guided me through this was my knowledge of Ayurveda and yoga and the practice I've collected on the path before. And after the birth of my second child, which was even harder because he came like also right away, I found myself sometimes so exhausted and so tired, and I thought, oh my God, how shall I go on? And that's when I started with the project, and that's also what I always love to do, is to write. And I started to write work on my, it wasn't my first book manuscript. I've written 5 before that. But this was a book manuscript called Mama Wonderful, saying how motherhood can be full of wonders. And there I compiled all the teaching I've been doing with my one-on-one clients, that I've learned on my journey, that I'm applying in my own motherhood, from Ayurveda lifestyle, Ayurvedic nutrition, from all the coaching tools I've been learning from my husband, and from my journey, from all the meditation. I put it all together in 5 different manuscripts. And long story short, now I'm putting slowly everything together. I've been learning on my own journey and on the journey with mothers, because since then I've created a preconception program, a pregnancy program, a first year of motherhood program, and an ongoing support program for mothers. Now I'm putting it all together in my first digital course called Mama Wonderful 101, Reclaim Your Time, Energy and Balance as a Busy Mom with Ayurveda, Yoga and Coaching, to present everything I've learned on a golden plate in front of you, with a clear roadmap, a clear framework, so you can apply it and you don't have to go to India, study this 30 years and go through all the heartbreaks and lonely times I partially have been through. So I hope it supports you. I give it from the bottom of my heart. From this little introduction, you might know how deeply I am connected to the practice of yoga, Ayurveda, and meditation. It's not just something I've learned in the teacher training. It's not even something I've learned in my California College of Ayurveda years. And it's not even something I've learned from seeing over 3,000 to 5,000 clients and over 10,000 yoga students by now. It's something I live. I live every single day. And I'm here to share it with you, to impart this knowledge and wisdom onto you, to help you, your children, and your family, and to help you be this magnificent self that you are, to create the life, health, career, and business you love, while showing up fully as the best version who you are for your family, your partner, and your friends, and the world as a whole. Thank you very much. I look so forward to sharing this journey with you and holding your hand all the way. Thank you very much. Namaste.